All right, we're going to start the Board of Finance meeting for January 19th. Present is myself, Mike Anderson, Vice Chair, Dan Smith, Gary Anino, Amy French. Winona is going to sit in for Sarah. Amy's going to sit in for Paul, who's absent right now, and Carl Johnson. It's 7:02. We move on to the second item on the agenda is public comment. Do we have any, Christine? Anything from the gallery? Okay. I'm sorry, I'm forgetting. Is Sarah on now?
Hi, Sarah's here. Sorry I'm late.
Okay. Well, I had Winona sitting for you, so we're gonna have you seated at 7:03. Amy French can still sit in for Paul. Friend, sorry. I know Amy French too. Daryl's here for the town assessor's office. Why don't you go ahead with your presentation, Daryl? Thank you.
Okay. Good evening. Tonight, I'm here to talk to the Board of Selectmen and the Board of Finance in regards to the Grand List 2021. I have handed out a sheet. The final number shows about a 4.78% increase in the Grand List. That's one of the better years that we've had in a long, long time. There's several reasons for it. We'll start by saying the differences in real estate is 1,648,446. You have to remember the board, because last year was a revaluation year, had a lawsuit regarding the assessment of 183 A and B Provincetown London Turnpike. The result of that lawsuit was the town took a loss, or we made a reduction of $1,559,530 in assessment dollars, over $2 million reduction. And that's because one of the buildings formerly held a medical center. And it came as a result of the trial or of the negotiations that this building is unfit for a medical center going forward. The property is too old, and it's almost impossible to find a medical center tenant for the building. We tried. Our town attorney did the best he could. So in a sense, the Grand List would have gone up $3 million in real estate if we hadn't taken the reduction. The next difference was personal property, up $11,349,534. Okay, the major reason for the increase in the personal property line item is a solar project being built at 227 Provincetown London Turnpike. That's the Lewis Farm. They were approved by the Connecticut Siting Council for 27 acres of land. They did ask for a reduction, but the reduction was only for, according to state statutes, for 3 megawatt or less generation. This project is a 5 megawatt generation, and I denied their request for an exemption. So that may be a court lawsuit coming forward, but as of right now, it's on the books. They also filed late, and according to state statute, when you file late, there's a 25% penalty, and we imposed the penalty for filing late. I'm sorry, but you were late. The thing that we have looking forward on personal property is there's a project currently in progress on Ella Wheeler Road. That project was a 125 acre, 15 megawatt facility. Due to some environmental problems they encountered during construction, it is now 353 acre project and no longer a 15 megawatt project, but more in lines of a 19 megawatt project. They were originally approved for 41,900 solar panels. Somehow it got up to 61,000 solar panels. Now, if you remember, the town made a deal for a fixed assessment for 20 years going forward. In my opinion, that deal is null and void because of the changes. Again, the town attorney is talking to the parties involved, see what happens as time goes forward. But I couldn't hold up the grand list because we run into a time limit that the state says I have to sign it before the 31st of January. And I intend to do that. Okay. The last major item is motor vehicles. Now, if you've listened to the radio, if you've listened to your TV or done any reading and news reports and stuff, you see that there is a severe chip shortage for the new computers that are in cars today. That resulted in used cars jumping in value, especially trucks. If you own a truck, hold on to your wallet. Your assessment may go up $2,000 to $3,000 as the truck got a year older. That's a $5,000 real dollar difference. I've talked to several towns to see if maybe there's some fluke or something, but town of Ledger is seeing the same thing. I talked to a friend of mine in West Hartford. He's seeing the same thing. The state of Connecticut Motor Vehicle Committee, which is my assessor association, has put out a statement that, yes, it's true, motor vehicles went up around 20 to 25%. So that's the huge increase. We got of $14,257,180 in the grand list. I have in 40 years never seen motor vehicles jump that much in 1 year. It's just amazing to me. And the campers, class code 31s that we see that are at the the trailer park that we have in town. A lot of these trailers and campers are, they're housed there all year round, and therefore we tax them. So we did pretty well there. So the difference, $27,255,159 increase in the grand list. That's 4.78% roughly. As good as we've seen in a long, long time. Any questions? Yes.
As far as the motor vehicle tax, so could we lose that next year?
Yes, we could. It depends on what the market does on used cars and trucks. It may be a 1 year flash in the pan. And then next year, if Detroit solves their problems with the chips and starts producing the trucks and cars that they want to, and electric cars become more and more popular, we don't know what's going to happen to gasoline powered motor vehicles. We just don't know at this time, but it may be a flash in the pan.
How much do you think that is, that increase?
What do you mean, how much?
I mean, what's the 25%? How much we talking here?
We got 130 more cars this year than last year on the list. Okay, so we have approximately 6,500 cars on the list. So if you made the division, you could find out what but it isn't equal across the board. If your car or truck is 20 years old, it has a $500 net assessment. That's by state statute. That didn't change. Yes. Yeah, if you have a $500, if you have a 20-year-old motor vehicle, $500. What a deal. Or a truck.
Harry, we can't hear you, just so you know, on the phone.
Go ahead, Dan.
What is the yearly percentage that motor vehicles usually go up?
It doesn't.
It usually stays flatline?
No, they go down.
They usually go down?
Yes, sir.
What's that usual percentage?
Around 3 to 5% down. And we tend to make up the difference because we get new vehicles registered. And so we can make up the difference every year with an increase in motor vehicle assessments. This year was absolutely nuts.
Daryl, I think Dan's question was the overall percentage on the motor vehicle as a whole, not individual vehicles.
You mean, how much do we go up every year on motor vehicles?
Yes.
I'd have to look. I don't have the
But we
answer.
don't usually go down overall.
No,
It usually stays flatline.
correct. It's like 2 or 3%. Doesn't usually go down, but it goes up. But because of the higher value of new cars and trucks, it tends to go up a little bit. But, you know, people don't hold cars as long as they used to. But we have several hundred $500 vehicles in the town.
Anyone online have any questions for Daryl?
No questions for me.
You may, Christine.
The Ella Wheeler Solar project that Daryl was referring to, the equalized abated tax payment, that's not going to be included in the calculations when we figure out when it comes online. That payment will be added into whatever we project the taxes to be, because it doesn't, it's not impacted by the mill rate. So whatever we figure out the mill rate to be, before we figure that out, we'll add that equalized amount in, so that we're not improperly raising people's taxes, knowing that we have an additional amount of money coming in.
Right. The mill rate, I mean, the agreement stated when they get clearance to produce power, it starts. We think it's going to be this spring. I have been up there. I've taken photographs of the project. It's massive. But, and you don't see it. And you don't see the one on Boombridge Road either. If you go down Provincetown London Turnpike toward the exit 93, you don't see the project. It's there.
Go ahead, Dan.
Maybe this is also with Bob Carlson and Daryl. How many solar projects do we have in either the pipeline, or does the town is palatable to have? I know like Hopkinton has, it seems like they have one going up every couple of months or whatnot, but how many, is there a statute in town, or is there a limit how many we can actually have in town?
Siting Council controls it.
Siting council controls that?
Yep. And we have, like I said, they have one project off Provincetown London Turnpike. There was 6 members of the siting council, and it was a 3-3 tie. And so they're going back as we speak. They're talking, revising the project a little bit, and they should be starting this spring or summer.
To answer your question, I talked to Greg Howard. He's investigating that with Hartford right now. To see if there could be a limit put on the number of solar projects that a town would have to take, not counting home project, obviously, but minimum megawatt might be 2.5, 3 megawatts and larger. Right now, we have 3 on the books. The one that Darryl was just speaking about on Route 184 that will probably get approved shortly. But it's now moved all to the south side of the road that you probably know about. Ella Wheeler project in the Lewis Farm. There's no other projects pending right now as far as large solar projects in town. That's why we're trying to get that answer before another one applies. See if we can stem the growth of solar projects in town.
The project on Winnichalk Hill was kind of crushed.
That project's done. For now.
That one's done.
Not built, not, I mean, it's not
But-
built. Yes.
It's not built, right? There is some solar projects that you don't really see, like this school. There's solar all over the roofs here. There's solar on the schools on the other side of the street. Town Hall has solar. And believe it or not, quite a few residential homes in town have gone solar. It's a coming thing, and we keep track of it. I can't assess it. The difference is, if the solar power generated is used for the building that it's on, then it's exempt. If they sell power to the grid, it isn't.
How do they know that?
How do they know what?
How do you know how much power is going back to the grid?
Eversource has a contract to buy it.
I know that, but how do you guys tax it?
We know by the siting council, because that's all part of the agreements. I read the siting council reports.
Even when we had to do the town arrays on the buildings, we had to go to, our paperwork had to go to the siting council. So every project has to go before them.
I'm just wondering, because I just got solar panels put on, but they haven't gone online yet, so I'm trying to figure out with the net metering, so I'm paying taxes to the town of North Stonington if I net meter back
No.
to.
No, if you put it on a residential home, they don't let you put on more power than you're gonna use. That should be the way it is. I don't know exactly in your case, but in most cases, they won't let you put 10 megawatts on your residential home.
Understood.
You know, your project is probably 5 kilowatts, 7 kilowatts, somewhere around there.
Well, I have a geothermal system, so it just makes it,
So
How much
you
more
use,
elec-
you use more power than most people.
I use like 3 houses worth.
Yeah. So you can have more solar
Yeah.
because you use so much,
Right.
but it's not extra.
No, I understand. I'm just saying, there's a chance on a wicked sunny day with that kind of,
Yeah, but I think they do calculations on a yearly basis,
It's an annual basis.
Yeah.
And
annual
if
basis.
you
So
shut all your demand off and suddenly pushed all that power to the grid, you can do it all you want. They just don't pay you for it. Yeah. Exactly.
right, for free.
mhm. Darrell, I had a question on the Ella Wheeler Road project. You expect the annual payment that was, I guess, negotiated, that's going to be increased, do you think? We'll have to
Yeah,
renegotiate
it's
the
gonna, it's
contract?
gonna be increased because the agreement was 125 acres. We were gonna tax the other part of the land. Okay, now we can't because it's filled with solar panels.
Right,
And they went from 41,900 to 61,000 solar panels. And they had to stay away from some vernal pools and spadefoot toads and other environmental issues that they found. So I think our agreement with them for that amount of money, we were gonna get some taxes on the other land they weren't using. Now we don't get that.
Yeah, since this is an ongoing issue with legal counsel, I think we should just leave it at, it's going to be renegotiated.
Yes,
sure.
and we haven't forgotten.
I mean, but for our purposes, if we have an increase in revenue, is that going to happen in this fiscal year that we're budgeting for right now?
You want to take, that's why that's not included. So you'll have at least that
101.
101,000.
Okay,
There may be above and beyond that.
and you said we would adjust,
Yes, so what we'll do is we have all the other variables that we do for revenue. So we'll include that 101 with those variables, and then we set the, calculate what the taxes need to be to make up the difference, and then set the mill rate from that.
So if we're looking at the motor vehicle increase of 25%, when it's usually average 1% to 2%, we're looking at probably a 23%.
Yeah, that's pretty nice. That's pretty nice.
But it's for likely 1 year.
Likely 1 year. But unless you got a crystal ball that can tell me what motor vehicle or used cars are going to sell for next year.
We have to forecast on the current budget year. We can't do anything to kind of
Right.
mitigate any change. So we just have to focus on what we know.
We call it the way we see it, and that's it. And then we tell you to be careful.
Yeah, I'm just bringing this up to the members of the Board of Finance because it's like one of those one-time, we're reintroducing money that was in, a designated fund for something that we're not doing anymore. And that's one-time revenue stream that you just got to be cognizant of that. Correct?
Correct.
I'm in agreement with that.
Sean, you want to say something? Sean Murphy, our treasurer, for those in the audience.
Not yet.
You gotta hold it.
The light's got to come on.
Now it's
You
blinking.
may.
Yeah, this parallels with what you were questioning on. And that if we allow the budget to go up 4.78% this year, and it takes a dive the following year, we have to, we've built in now a new norm. My question to Daryl, if the motor vehicle on this, if the increase was zeroed out, what would the total be instead of 4.78%? So then it's more like a 2.4, 2.2%. And that's what I just wanted to get at that number. If we wanted, if you wanted to take that into consideration, that it might take a dive the following year and not allow it to go up as much, or somewhere in between the 2.2 and 4.78. That might make this spike more bearable in years to come. Thank you.
But following on that, we would just be setting ourselves up for a heck of a seesaw if we assumed that the 4.78 was sustainable. Yeah, I always look at it as or not. Yeah.
Who's Amy
Sarah.
or Sarah? Oh, Sarah, okay.
Winona was actually raised her hand before me.
Hi, I just wanted to ask what the total increase in the grand list was again. I'd missed the number.
4.78%.
No, the dollars.
27,255,159.
Okay,
We'll email this out tomorrow so that you guys at home can have a copy of it.
thank you.
Sarah?
Yeah, so just to follow on Winona's question, I know Sean was mentioning the percentage. Do we have a hard number? Like, could we have a dollar number for the increase related to the motor vehicle? Like it's,
14,257,180.
yeah, sorry, over last year, and I could look it up. I just don't have it at my fingertips. If you don't have it at your fingertips, that's fine. I'm just curious. Like, what's the difference?
I don't have what it went from 2019 to 2020. I didn't look.
So we had 2020 motor vehicles were taxed at 52,503,920.
Yeah, I don't have the previous year.
This year it's 66,761,100.
So 52 million to 62 to 60.
Yeah, 52.5 to 66.7
Okay,
million.
that's a huge jump. Okay, thank you.
Yeah.
Well, I can't say that this isn't good news, guys. I mean, it shows that what we're doing economically seems to be going in the right direction. We have people trying to come into town and we're building. We have projects coming in that are, environmentally and socially responsible. The motor vehicle thing, I don't know, that's not, I know that North Stonington can claim credit for that. But, we'll take it for the year.
It'll come out of my hide come July. I'm telling you, people are going to be unhappy.
Yes, please, Carl.
Would we be able to assume that half of the 7 million, we could use for a one-time expenditures we need, not planning to have it in the budget? In the budget, but also knowing that they're not, it's coming down to be paid for every year. Putting the money back into the slush fund and/or taking some projects down if we have to. Is there anything that we can do as a board to do that so that we don't everybody will think that money is there every year? We need to make it.
Oh, no.
Well, we have a policy with regard to the undesignated fund. All right, so, at the end of the day, we're going to come up with a budget. There's going to be revenue and there's going to be expenses.
Right.
And
I think you had.
if we have,
We already had a deficit.
if we're deciding, we're going on we're not going to include anything other than, 3% of that increase of motor vehicle versus 25%, we got to see what happens with regard to the undesignated fund and whether or not that then increases it beyond our policy.
Okay.
All right. And then if we need, then that's a perfect time to say, all right, we're going to replenish the undesignated fund. And then you go to the capital improvements committee and said, here we go, guys, here we got one, we have we're looking out this year with this one-time expenditure, with being smart fiscally with putting what we need to put aside per our policy, and the rest of it, are for those one-time expenditures. That's what I see it. I mean, if you guys have a different philosophy, I'll listen, but we're going to come down to the end and the must-haves. And then the wants, which, I don't want to even call capital improvements the wants, but it's at the end of the day, that's always the stuff that gets cut first. That we have some money now to use towards that we can't count on it next year. So it's for those capital improvements.
You gotta remember though, these are assessment numbers that you're seeing on the paper. In real dollars, half of the 14 is about $200,000.
Say that again.
What you're looking at the paper is assessments, not taxes, not revenue. You got to multiply the number times the mill rate. And so if you took half of the 14, said it was 7 times the current mill rate, you're looking at a little over $200,000. Not as much as you think.
Right. It's still, that's a little over
A little over 200,000.
Right, which is
It's nice.
a little under half a mil.
Right.
I can get some projects done. I can get some capital projects done. Well, we have our debt. The debt's separate than the capital, so. Who's first, Winona or Sarah?
I think it's me this time. I was just gonna comment, I think partially on what you said, Mike. I think capital tends to get decimated. It definitely did last year. $200,000. I mean, a couple of the things we approved out of band. We have to be careful, you know, like we do have to put some in the budget if we plan to use it, because we do get a lot of feedback about doing separate appropriations. So capital is good, but also what if we had the opportunity to like keep the mill rate flat or even lower it a little bit too? I mean, that's always that would be great if we could do that, especially in a reval tax year. So I think there's a lot of good opportunities here. And thanks, Daryl, for the number, because that's the number I was trying to understand as well. So you said if you take half of the 14 million, so basically the 14 million represents about 400,000 in taxes generated.
That's correct.
I would love to understand what was generated last year. So the 300,000, like what's the actual difference? Is that $100,000 difference? Like what is that? Because that's the number that we're actually working with. Like that.
Repeat the question again.
So this year we generated. So is the 14 million? The 14 million is the extra tax revenue. So 400,000 is actually above and beyond what we collected last year. Is that a correct assumption?
That would be correct.
All right. So
Plus you have another 11. So
Okay.
you're going to get about $700,000 more money by keeping the mill rate the same.
okay. Thank you. That's very helpful.
What was that last thing, Daryl? I'm sorry.
You're gonna raise about $700,000 by keeping the mill rate exactly the same.
Mhm. Well, we have a hole to fill to starting off. You know, so we don't want to fill the hole with the motor vehicle money because it's not year over year. That's why I thought that money, you know, is more suited for capital. But obviously, we have to see where the numbers shake out when the budgets come in for Board of Ed and general government. Oh, Winona?
I just wanted to make a comment. I think I would be careful to say that we're lucking out because this extra 700,000 is coming from the taxpayers. So they're going, I'm not sure that anyone who's going to get this tax bill in July is going to feel lucky.
That's a good point.
Fair.
You know, there's still $11 million that's coming from personal property from, you know, non-motor vehicles, talking businesses that have come into town, so.
Right.
Anything else for Daryl? Thank you, Daryl.
You're welcome. Yeah.
Thank you, Daryl.
I'll turn on my radio, see what the world says.
On to agenda item number 4. Christine had sent out monthly reports. You have anything, comments on that, Christine?
I just wanted to let you guys know there were 3 reports that came from the Board of Education. They were getting caught up on their approvals, so that's why you got 3 at once. And then they also shared the update on the non-lapsing account, what's been expended to date. So if you guys had any questions on anything, I can answer it. There's nothing out of the ordinary on the profit and loss. Just again, no, we are still currently paying the expenses for this building out of B 2710 in a subcategory that we've made called 298 NW for 298 Norwich Wesley Road. So that is town property maintenance, B 2710 subcategory 298 NW.
That's in the general government report.
Correct.
Do we have any questions from the board? I tried to print all this stuff out and then my computer blew up, so I'm on my phone. So the balance this is the RISA account? That's the non-lapsing that you're.
Yes.
And what is presently in that account? Is that,
So the balance in the non-lapsing account is $351,037.70.
okay. Do you know what's the maximum they're allowed to have in that account?
It's just that they can put up to 2% of their budget in at the end of the year. There's not a maximum threshold that they can't exceed.
Got it.
I have 2 questions. There's Downs Construction, wall vent piping, boys room. Is that something that happened or is it construction related from like, this has been an ongoing issue or what's the history behind that?
It was something that was construction related with the project, but since the project invoices have all been submitted to the state, there's no more expenditures that can be taken against the project. So the Board of Ed decided to take the money out of the non-lapsing.
There's no warranty, there's no nothing like that?
We had a 1-year warranty. We are outside of that warranty.
You had another question, Dan?
No.
Oh, you said you had 2 questions.
Well,
Anyone else?
yeah, I do. Seeing this not lapsing account, are we as a board, and I'll open up the conversation for it. Would we consider putting a cap on how much they can put in this account at some point?
You don't have that authority unless you were to renegotiate the
Yes, for
MOA
this
on the
year.
account.
Yes, for this year, we don't have that authority, but when we renegotiate it yearly, we can review it.
The agreement isn't, the agreement is, for lack of a better word, non-lapsing. You would have to renegotiate the agreement. You have to get legal counsel involved if you want to do it, but the current agreement doesn't expire. So you every year have the ability to let them put up to 2% in.
Yes, but every year we have to re-up that, correct?
No, not the actual agreement that's signed by
No,
the
we
chair
have
of
a
the Board
chance,
of
we're
Finance and
allowed
the
to
chair of Board of
review
Ed.
it. And we could, at a point in the year, say we're
We have to give them notice.
revoking. We'd have to actively revoke their ability to have this account.
Okay, so I'm just saying, we're at $350,000 and I would like to see a plan at some point from the Board of Ed to see how they're going to be spending some of these funds.
They submitted that as part of the budget that was approved. They deferred some of their expenses for this current fiscal year in their budget that they presented, saying they were going to spend X number of dollars from the non-lapsing account rather than having it budgeted in the town annual budget. So they did present that as part of their budget.
I'm talking about going forward. They have to have something going forward for this year's budget, I'm sure.
Right, but they're only 6 months into this year. Deb, the business manager for the school, is on. If, I don't know, Deb, if you want to address this. But
There might be expenses.
there's
Coming
maybe
up.
planned
Yeah, there's gonna be
expenses that they just
expenses, but I
haven't.
don't, yeah,
Yeah.
it'd be nice to say, all right, we have this financial statement, but what's coming up monthly on this? What are they gonna burn? For expenses?
Mike, can I comment?
Yes, of course.
Yeah, Dan, I agree with you. I think our I think our flex here is that we have the ability to control the approval of the budget for next year. So if they come back, like, I'd like to see their budget, right? And so their budget comes back and it's significantly high, we can ask them to defer some of their costs to their RISA account to bring their budget down. Like, that's a option that we have to do. So I don't necessarily expect them to be using the RISA account like now, month over month, as they're going on a specific plan. But when they present, whenever that is on the calendar, in March, the beginning of March, which isn't that far away, I would expect, here's my budget, here's how much it's going up or going down or keeping flat, and here's how much I'm expecting to use it for the ERISA account. Here's the one-time purchase of X, Y, and Z, all new art supplies for every grade, or whatever that looks like. That's where I would be looking for it anyway.
I mean, it's a new account. This is like really our second budget cycle with the account. From what Christine just said, last year they were already deferring some costs out of what the taxpayers have because they had money in the account. They haven't used it yet. You know, yes, I agree with you, Dan. This is, these are not small dollars here. But that kind of money could go in an instant, with certain supplies. So, I mean, let's see what, we have the report. Let's see what happens with, this budget cycle. And, if we have questions from them, I think it's certainly appropriate to ask them what the relationship is between the budget and what's remaining in the RISA account.
Yeah, I would have to pull the exact budget to find out truly, all these network hardware items that they've been buying. That it's invoiced in the fall, and it sounds like they cut the check. It looks like they cut the check in December, but a lot of this stuff has happened towards, 4 or 5 months after the budget was approved. I understand that, but really, what else are they going to be buying on top of that?
I think the point being,
It's like, I'm going to go buy tech.
No.
How much tech?
yeah, we have Deb here that she may be able to shed some light on it. But the point is that they have this money, this account to buy things when it's best time to buy them, rather than trying to do a flurry buy at the end of the year.
I understand that, but if you're gonna go buy tech, but I'm gonna buy tech here, here, and here, there should be a plan of that laid out.
I can add
Deb?
something to that.
Please,
Absolutely.
Deb, go ahead.
Sure. So the purchases that we made, those were all things that we took out of last year's budget and we planned ahead. The board approved those in early summer to make the purchases. And unfortunately, a lot of tech has been delayed in fulfilling those orders because of some chip issues or just production issues in general. This is for a network move at 298. We're moving our entire network to support our internet and the server room, and it's a huge project. So this is a piece of it. there's more to come, but unfortunately, until the work now that needs to be done can be scheduled, they're terribly behind. So to say that we're going to spend X dollar amount in March and have that come fruition, we can't determine that until this next piece is done. We're still waiting for our data wire to be moved. So that is something that everything has to go through our board, and it's for emergency purposes, but all for educational purposes as well. So we can't just purchase something outside of the educational process. Those are planned purchases and those are emergency purchases. So should a boiler go down or something go down that is a large ticket item, that's what those monies are kind of earmarked for, as well as to assist in offsetting some of the budget as that was used last year. I hope that helps.
It does, Deb. Thank you.
You're welcome.
Yes, it does.
Any questions based on what Deb just presented? Any additional questions on the monthly reports? Okay. Something we have to vote on as far as the financials. Moving on to agenda item 5, budget guidance discussion to departments. As far as I'm concerned, we're still a little premature on this. We do know this, the grand list at this point. We can start, I'd say, formulating some ideas, everyone individually, on what you feel how we should be going forward. We've already had some discussion on it, on as far as how I feel about the, any extra revenue this year. Obviously, we have a hole to fill. It seems like we're going to be able to fill that hole without having a tax increase, a mill rate increase, which is the good news. Right? Does everyone understand that?
Yes.
We have, roughly the same amount that we have with the motor vehicle coming in for real estate and personal, which means there's, somewhere in the neighborhood of almost $500,000, or actually more than $500,000 in extra revenue. And what do we have? What's the hole we had to fill? We have like 0.2 mil.
It was $193,999.
So roughly that, right?
I did look it up earlier. I'm not just memorizing it. I'm not Rain Man.
Still impressive, Christine.
I'd say if we can for next time, if we can say, all right, here's the whole, have the numbers, here's the hole that we had, here's what we can fill with the personal and real estate increases.
So the budget has many facets to it. It's not just the tax revenue. There may be other revenue sources that we have, things that change from the state, additional revenue sources from the state. So I don't think we should just strictly look at the tax piece. I think we need to look at all the revenues as a whole. There may be increased revenue from tuition for new students that are coming into the school. One student is $11,000. That adds up when you have more and more students coming from out of town. So I think you can have these numbers as additional things in the back of your head, but I think we need to look at everything as a whole, not just the burden on the taxpayer.
Sure. Does anyone think we need to move forward with budget guidance at this point?
Could we talk about it for just a minute? Is that
Sure.
okay? So So the overage from last year was about 200,000, just to use round numbers to make it easy math.
Yeah.
Not factoring any additional income outside of the 700,000 that Daryl shared today. That leaves us about 500,000 just for motor vehicle and personal property increases for this year. So,
And real estate.
and yeah, real estate. Yeah. So, you know, that's, I guess my question is, what more information do we think we need to have a budget guidance conversation? Like what do people feel like they need to be informed about to be able to have that? Do we need the full, do we need to pull the budgets? Like what was the Board of Ed budget? What was the Selectmen budget from last year? Because we have those PowerPoints. Like what I'd like to, maybe if we think we need more information, I'd love to like put a little packet. And by packet, I mean maybe a couple bullets in an email to packet it. Maybe not quite packet, but just say like, here's our thing, here's our numbers. And then let's talk about where we are based on these numbers. So we can, we can pull the BOE budget from last year. We can pull the Board of Selectmen budget from last year. Until we hear their budget presentations, we're not going to know necessarily like what the capital needs are, etc. But if we want to strategically say we're willing to give another 100,000 to a capital project that's spent within 1 year, because that's money we don't know what's going. Like we can come up with some guidance, some strategic conversation. But what else do people need to know to be able to have that conversation?
As far as I'm concerned, at this point last year, we had a little bit more. We knew that there was going to be very, very little to work with, if anything. So, although I didn't necessarily agree with telling the Board of Ed, we're going to give you, we're allowing you a, what did we say last year? 1.3% increase. We knew that we were already in a $400,000 hole from the year before, that we took from the from the undesignated fund. So you could say, this is going to be a very, very tight year. Right now we're looking at 4.7% increase in overall revenue, $700,000 in extra money, not extra money, but more money on top of where we were last year. So we know we can fill the hole we have and then some. And as Christine said, we still haven't talked about other revenue streams that are coming in, perhaps from the Board of Ed with additional out-of-town students and whatever else from the state. So my personal feeling is, this is not a time to go to the Board of Ed and say, hey, come back with a zero budget. I feel like we, obviously we're still, as a board, aren't here to spend and spend and spend. We don't think we've done that in the last, 3 years that I've been here. And I don't think we intend to do that. But I don't necessarily want to tell the Board of Education, that they got to come back with a 0% budget this year increase. I just think it's disingenuous. Go ahead, Gary.
Sorry, I disagree. We got a plus of 700,000, 200,000 is already spoken for. That leaves us 500,000. I think the guidance should be flat to budget with everything except for commodities. I think the cost of fuel and electricity alone across the total town budget is going to consume that extra 500,000 until we know more. But I don't think anybody can doubt, we've seen electricity multiply. We've seen fuel multiply. We can't just assume that this 4.78% is ours to consume in budget requests. Commodities is going to be a part of everyone's budget, and it's going to chew that up.
Would you put a percent on the commodity increase, Gary? What's your?
I was trying to figure out whether I had numbers in the back of my head. I don't. I could come up with some. But I mean, I was reading from some of the solar companies that the electric price would it take a 12% bump in 2022 or something like that alone. So if you go through the town budget as far as what electrical bills are going to be and add the 12%, I'm pretty sure we're going to take a pretty good bite out of that 500,000. And there's nothing wrong with taking this approach for now, and as we get better transparency into other revenue sources, then relaxing. But the starting point should be flat except for your commodities, my opinion.
Anyone else?
I pretty much agree with the same way. Like I said earlier, if we could fill some holes, not count on it. So I'm still thinking everybody should come in with what they absolutely need to get going. And as we come up with extra towards the end, all right, here you go. I mean, I know everybody used to ask for big numbers, hoping they got chopped down to where they want. But we're all trying to come up front right now and say, look, you come in zero, and if we got any extra, we can fudge it out later. But the amount of money that we may have extra showing right now is not a steady income. It's a one-time or time and a half deal is what I'm feeling.
No, I've done my point earlier was, if we got to fill a hole, and then if there, we have money remaining from, whatever, $500,000, considering no other additional revenue, that if, it's not taken up by general government for other things like you're talking about, Gary, like commodities and fuel prices and increased busing prices because of their fuel prices, that the extra is not to get extra stuff for either government or for education. It's for capital improvements that we've been putting off for so long. I think that's so. I just don't think, I don't agree with telling Board of Ed, you got to come in with a certain percentage at this point. I just think it's premature, but other people might have different opinions, but I didn't think we needed to do it last year, but they were also trying to avoid week after week coming in and getting beaten up, and, we can certainly as a board say, guys, just because we have this money doesn't mean you should expect us not to want you to come in as low as possible.
I really think we need to solidify the guidance though. Whether we do it today or we do it the next week, I think if all people have in the back of their mind is that we have $700,000 more now than we did before, and we don't say why it's not that, and we don't give some sort of guidance. I completely agree with you, Mike. I thought it was premature to give the guidance last year. However, it worked really, really well. Like, we've never had the Board of Ed come in at such a low increase. And I think the prior year, which I wasn't necessarily a part of the board, but watched it play out on Zoom, people, they came in high, and then they cut middle school sports, and then parents were calling in. There was this like huge churn. And I really do think that the 1.3% or whatever it was, it was a real number that people were like, all right, I can work with. And Gary, I get what you're saying, the 0%, but that's literally what's happened every single year prior to that. It's like 0, 0, 0. And so people feel the need to play the game, right? The negotiating game. So even if we don't want to come up with guidance tonight, I'm fine with that. But what I want to know is, like, what else do we need to know? So if I personally look at the numbers right now, right, $700,000 increase, 200 of that gone, right? Because our budget was 200,000 more last year than what what we actually took in income. So that's 500,000. 4 of that 500,000 is not guaranteed next budget cycle. So what do we want to do with that? Mike, you had some good thoughts at the beginning. Some of that maybe what you could say, we could say this is like conjecture, but like if we could all talk about it and agree on it or not agree on it, at least put it on a page and modify it. At least we're moving the conversation forward, right? Half of that we put in the undesignated fund as long as it doesn't go over the policy. The other half of that, $200,000, gets split between Board of Ed and Board of Selectmen to use on one-time capital purchases, or maybe it just goes to Board of Selectmen because Board of Ed has the RISA account. Like there's a lot of conversation we can have where we could come up with some guidelines, and then we can say, like, here's the plan at a high level. Yes, we have 700,000 more than we were planning to have, but this is why it's not 700,000. This is why it's, for you, Board of Ed, it's 75,000, and for you, Board of Selectmen, it's 100,000. And we can do that and still keep our budget whole, still protect ourselves from overspending next year. And maybe if we're crazy, like maybe we can even slightly reduce the taxes by a mil or something. Like we could have that conversation. I think we have all the information that we need to have that conversation next week. If it's at the beginning of the agenda, so it's not too late.
Those are good points, Sarah. And go ahead. I'm not. Yeah.
I can't hear you, Dan.
That was just good point, Sarah. I'm done.
Oh.
Go ahead.
Oh, sorry.
So my 2 cents in this, I think with a little bit of a mixture of everybody, I think if we tell both boards, go with your lowest to pay the bills, like Gary was talking about. And then basically we know that we're going to have this chunk of money of 700 or whatever it's going to be. And we know where our revenue is going to be. And we match it up where basically those 2 boards are going to provide us liabilities. And we're going to know we're going to have this much over here and this much over here. This is what is to run the school, and this is what it is to run the rest of the government. And then we say, all right, well, what's your wish list? And then we start, all right, well, this is a high priority. We're going to take the money from here, 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 and then build our budget that way. You pay your bills, like Gary was saying, pay your bills, have your commodities and everything to be able to run everything flat. And then whatever money you have left over on the revenue side, then you start a la carting stuff into your budget that you can afford. And then Dan Spring always says, we have to make sure that we provide the budget that is going to be palatable to the people that actually run this town and is the town voter. It's a taxpayer. We have to make sure that we provide something to them that they're going to actually sign off on. They're the one, it's not the Board of Finance, it's not the Board of Selectmen, it's the voter that signs off on this budget. We have to make sure that we provide something that the voter is going to buy off on, because they are the ones that have the final say on it. The years of having we've had, Sean, 2-3 years where we've had multiple referendums where we're going into November trying to get a budget passed. We can't operate like that. Like Sarah was saying, it wasn't the greatest, providing them 1.3 or even the year. Yes, it wasn't, they weren't happy about it, but you know what? It streamlined the process of being able to get the back and forth cut down. We didn't have 3 or 4 rounds of, well, go get me this. No, go get me this. No, we want 1.3. They came close. We were fighting over, $500,000 here and $500,000 there, but at least they had some direction. I think what we need to do is we need to have them provide us the lowest, the best budgets that they can provide. And then they say, hey, we want to have this. What is the fund? What do you got for funds? Well, we have all this fund. We have all this money over here. And then we start going back and forth to build those budgets back up, to be able to fund what they need to have. And also make it what's palatable to the voter.
I don't disagree with you. I just think at this point, we have a different situation than we had last year where we have this increase in revenue, and we don't know what the other revenue piece is. So you got to have at least, one side of the equation unknown.
I'm taking that revenue right now and I'm saying, Board of Selectmen, go build your budget. The revenue, figuring out the liabilities of the revenue side, that's our issue that we have to figure out. They have to go run the town, just like the Board of Ed's got to run the school. Let them come back with their best budgets and everything. Lowest that he can do, just like what Gary was saying, pay your bills. And then we say, all right, we got this much money. Board of Ed, what do you got to accomplish? Board of Selectmen, what do you got to accomplish? Every single year, we come back and we're always fighting with ourselves about how to build these budgets. And we always go about it. We always say, this is what we want to do, but we always go down the path where we're under the gun and we have to, we just keep reverting ourselves back to the old way. When you build a household budget, you build well, these are my bills and this is my revenue. And then you start, well, I can't afford a new car this year, so I'm going to defer it to next year. And you know what? We're going to get a new living room set. We're going to buy this year instead of doing this. You base everything off of what you can afford and what's going to be palatable to the voter. It's a mixture of all of our, it's really a mixture of all of our ideas. It's just how we execute it. We're providing them guidance. Go get us your budgets. They know that we've said it multiple times. The Board of Ed knows Board of Ed budget. The Board of Selectmen know the Board of Selectmen's budget, and they know how to execute it. Then we have to kind of figure out how we're going to fund it.
I don't disagree. I just think, I don't know where the disconnect is. The guidance has always been, and I don't think there's ever been a year where say, hey, Board of Education, go spend as much as you want. They very well know that we expect them to come in and pay your bills. You have all these contractual arrangements that are going to drive the 90%, 99% of the budget, as we know, we've all learned. And then they have the other items. And, again, I think the simple guidance is, like you said, pay your bills and give us your best shot right off the bat, because we're not, we can't expect.
That's basically what I'm saying.
And I don't have a problem with that. Just, I don't know what the percentage is though, Dan.
I don't think they know the percentage right off the bat. And I don't think we're going to know until they give it to us.
That's right.
Winona has her hand up.
Go ahead, Winona.
Thanks, Sarah. I think we need to be cognizant that the townspeople might want some of their tax dollars back. So even if the Board of Ed and the Board of Selectmen come back with minimal increases, it might not have a lot of traction if people think that the extra 500 came from them. So flat kind of seems like a good place to at least realize we might end up back at.
Mike, can I propose an exercise rather than talking about this being about guidance? Because I love math and math is always good.
I can't stand.
Offline between this, if run it by Paul, make sure he's okay with putting it on the agenda. But offline from this meeting, the next meeting, I'll put a Excel calculator together where we kind of like plug in what was last year's budget, what was this year's budget, what's our 700,000, something that I can bring up on the screen we can play with real time together, just to have the conversation in general. What's our revenue? To your point, Dan, what's our family budget? what do we got? And move stuff out, right? Because right now our family budget looks like it's $700,000 more than what it actually is, right? And so we need to be able to all be on the same page about what how we want to treat that $700,000 before we get the budgets in and start negotiating. So I'm happy to just put like a little Excel calculator, can send it out. People can say, I want this item, line item added, whatever we could, and then we could just have a little, I hear that used to happen, that Mustafa used to do that and it was helpful. We could give it a try.
I'm sure that we could get his. How extensive is this spreadsheet going to be? Are you going to
Like six
numbers?
Yeah, I can only think of like 6 major things we put in there, right? Board of Selectmen budget, Board of Education budget, projected revenue for 2022, 2023. That's 3 lines.
But you have to do, for Board of Selectmen, you have to do general, debt, and capital.
Right. They're last year's stuff.
Do those 3.
Yeah.
Board of Education, you maybe break it down from contractual to
I don't even know
non-contractual.
if I don't even know if we need to go that deep yet.
It's like this Board of Education is probably just one budget, it's
Right.
just, we're talking big numbers here, so.
And then we
I
take,
think you have to break down for, the debt is fixed. We should be able to know that number.
Mhm.
And the capital is, fluctuating and general is fluctuating, so we should have those broken down for Board of Selectmen.
we have that in the last PowerPoint that they shared about their budget. Last year, I can just validate the numbers with Christine, but we have all those numbers.
It's the cover sheet on the budget on the website.
Right. Yes, the cover sheet. Yeah. I mean, I don't want to do it if people don't feel like it's helpful and aren't interested, but if people genuinely feel like it would be helpful.
I think it'd be very helpful. I think we're all in agreement. At least if we wanted to move numbers around, but I think we all understand that, this increase, to Winona's point, it's a lot of it is taxpayer money. Not that all of it's not taxpayer money, just about. But the increase is, we want to be cognizant of that. But the fact of the matter is that we still have to run a town. We have to move a town forward in a fiscally responsible way. And I think between our board and the Board of Selectmen and the Board of Education, we can come up with that budget. But knowing that we have a $200,000 hole to fill right off the bat, and that most likely the commodities are going to be increased, that are going to suck up, some of this money. There's not a ton of wiggle room. So I think we're still in a situation where we're all making sure that we're sharpening our pencils, as we always say. But there's still a lot of information that needs to come in. But I think that'd be helpful, Sarah, if we have, as the information comes in, we can start moving pieces around.
Yeah, thanks. Yeah,
And get a broad eye view of it.
it could be some good news. We could find money that we want to potentially hold to give back, to Winona's point. So we can just model it out. And the beautiful thing about Excel is there's unlimited versions of copy and paste, so we could put 2, 3, 4 models next to each other and look at them together. So
Sarah, I think that would be really helpful because like myself, I wasn't here last year, so I don't have the information in the documents that you're talking about. I obviously have the cover sheet, but I don't have the details. And just to be clear, I mean, look, I want to move this town forward as well. That's why I ran to be on this Board of Finance and want to do it fiscally, appropriately. I think though that we need to keep in mind that how we market our plan to the townspeople is going to be really important, especially this year, given all of these crazy things that we've just talked about here tonight.
Maybe one more category, Sarah, would be the undesignated fund.
Yep.
The amount
Yep.
that's in that. That way, if we're, we have some additional that we want to put in there.
Sounds good.
Anything further on budget guidance?
All I want to do is just remind you guys of the schedule. So on Wednesday, February 2nd, you'll have a joint meeting with the Board of Selectmen to hear presentations from Public Works, Economic Development, Land Use, and the Fire Company. Then 2 weeks after that, on the 16th, you'll have presentations from the Wheeler Library, the Ambulance Association, and the Recreation Commission.
Thank you. So I think future strategies, I think, partly is it Sarah's idea for this, the spreadsheet. Anyone else have any additional items to put in for future strategies? We pretty much have our calendar and what's coming up, and just get ready for presentations. Has the annual report, is that done?
All entries have been received. I was finalizing the last moving pictures around today, so I should have it done by the end of the week, and I will email it out to everybody on the Board of Finance to take a look before we finalize it and publish on the website.
Okay,
But everyone did submit.
okay. And just so everyone's clear, it's basically, they've talked about what they did with the money that they received last year. And they're basically justifying, why they should either get that same amount again or need more or whatever. They're reporting on, what each department has to submit to the Board of Selectmen, what they did with their money last year. So it's important for us as we're going into these meetings, because I don't know if we've ever really done it. So on future strategies, it might be a good idea. Everyone really take a look at the annual report, at least for the people that are coming in to speak to you. Make sure you look at what they reported for the last year. And maybe that could come out with some pointed questions for them. Rather than just let them present, you say, well, this is what happened last year. And I mean, there's reports that you can go back from year to year to year to find out, is there something going on there where they're not spending appropriately, or they are.
In
Hopefully.
addition to that, all the departments, boards and commissions who submitted the budget request forms with the Board of Finance cover sheet, I'll send you out a SharePoint link before your meeting on the 2nd, probably early next week, so that you can start reviewing what people have submitted. Anyone who's part of the general government budget, their budget request, when it gets to the actual budget that's submitted to the Board of Finance by the Board of Selectmen, may not reflect what was submitted, what's in the paperwork, because that's what they asked the Board of Selectmen for. The Board of Selectmen may make modifications before it comes to the Board of Finance, but you will see their original request and their cover sheet justifying why they asked for what they asked for.
Okay. Does everyone understand that? Basically, say I'm the town crew and I think I need X, and they're gonna submit their budget request on the forms that we put out. They're gonna submit that to the Board of Selectmen. The Board of Selectmen are gonna either say yes, or they're gonna beat them up. More likely the latter. And so the final numbers might not be the same as what is on those forms, but this is, kind of like here's the ask, and then they whittle down, and then we whittle down some more. Yeah, Bob Carlson's point, there's been times where the Board of Selectmen have cut out things that Board of Finance ended up putting back. It's all part of the process.
So are they gonna, not everybody, obviously, but
Can you hear Gary, everyone?
not everybody, obviously, but when people come to present like the library, are they gonna show us how the $65,000 that was given to the library from last year was allocated this year? I mean, what it was consumed by?
It is up to them what they decide to present, and then you as the Board of Finance and the Board of Selectmen can ask whatever questions are not answered by the information they provide.
Can we request that the entities that just got an allocation, first thing out of the gate, show us how you used last year's before you tell us what you want for this year? I love that, Mike.
Okay. So we typically don't give them that guidance. They come in, they present what they want to present. But as Christine just said, the first thing you can do as a board is say, okay, let's back up. We gave you X number of dollars last year. You're asking for this much this year. What did you do with last year's money?
Yeah, I think it's going to be a more fruitful conversation if they're prepared to answer that question before they show up. Is there a way to get that message out to them that we're going to want to see that?
I think any group who really thinks they deserve the money should be able to justify that by heart. Honestly.
One thing we've never asked is for how much money is in endowments and private accounts, as we know.
I wasn't going there. I just want to know if you got X amount last year, how was it consumed?
No, I agree, but that's one advantage you have with the Board of Ed, right? Because you know how much is in their account, their RISRA account or their non-lapsing account. But we don't ask the fire department, the ambulance, the library, how much money's in their account. So, but they should at least tell you how they spent last year's money that the town gave them. But that's why you're here to ask that question.
And I know I presented when I was on the board at the library of the selectmen, and we've done budget bills before. We show the proceeds from the endowment as part of the budget bill. I mean, that it's not taboo to ask how much interest you're getting off your endowment. You don't have to ask the balance of the endowment.
No, I agree.
Yeah, okay.
And I think there's also some non-financial questions you can ask, future plans when it comes to the fire company and the ambulance. What percentage?
Go to the other mic. Selectman Carlson.
I love that, Mike.
So you-
Just kneel next to Carl.
I got it. No, it's on. Just had to bring it back up again. Sure, was it just, oh yeah, so you can ask 9 financial questions. When it comes to the fire department and the ambulance, like how many calls do you make? How much percentage of the calls do you make? You know, the how often do you run certain trucks? How many people do you have there? We have per diems now. How many people are there Monday through Friday? But then again, how many people are there from 5 o'clock at night till 5 the next morning? How many people are there on a weekend? So there's a lot of questions you should ask that are non-financial questions to help decide how the town wants to support that group.
Thank you.
And correct me if I'm wrong, is some of that information in their annual report, like, here's how this is what we got for the budget last year, and this is how we spent it?
That's what they're supposed to report on. Some do, some don't.
Yeah, some do.
I know that's part of this process. I think they have to be made aware that that is what is expected.
It was
Other
in the
than
email.
what else are they reporting? We had a great year. It was awesome. Thank you. Give us the same amount of money.
Take a look at the reports when I send it out at the end of the week and
Okay.
we'll go from there.
I think guys, we need to be more looking at that.
And I'm in agreement with you on that. If that is the expectation and they do not provide that up to that expectation, we as a town body and everything should be kicking those back. and saying that this is not acceptable.
You as the Board of Finance are responsible for the annual report. So if you feel that way, once you get the annual report, then you can go back to those groups.
So I see.
Is there a deadline for that? It's supposed to be published?
Just has to be done.
Review the annual report, everyone, please. I think Paul would concur, Chairman Paul. Joe Gross has been saying it for years. Anything else for future strategies? Hearing none, motion to adjourn? Gary, second. All right, Dan. Any discussion? All in favor? Aye.
Aye.
Yeah, all set. Thank you, everyone.